Here's the mic.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you today. My name is Will Morgan. I'm a founding steward and chief of staff at Opolis. I was also the executive finance steward for our beloved ETHDenver from 2018 until last year's event. That might seem surprising since this is my 7th ETHDenver and I am a somewhat unfamiliar face. But that is also kind of by design because I'm missing parties at night by rage-eating funnel cakes while cutting checks to food vendors and holed up in my hotel room reconciling buffer coin payments and the like. Regardless, this is my 7th ETHDenver and it's my first time on a stage with a mic in my hand, and it is really great to be with you today. Here's a little brief outline of where we're going today. We'll touch briefly on ETHDenver since we are here and it's such a big part of my story in crypto, but we'll also touch on your role at ETHDenver as well. Then we'll go into how Web3 is designing and building a better world, the current state of designs of incentives, and a future state of incentive design. I truly believe that human thriving is good business, and I think that incentives are the way of the future that will get us to the better world that we know is possible. So going back to ETHDenver, it was 2017. Sometime towards the end of 2017, we were just down the street in a co-working space, and John Powler came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about hosting this Colorado crypto meetup. Can you run the accounting for it?" And I said, "I don't know what that means, but sure." Mistake number one. No, I'm kidding. So I started billing sponsors, and we started seeing money coming in, and then the weird invoices started showing up. Can you pay this invoice for 40 oversized beanbags? Can you pay this invoice for 5 kegs of kombucha? It got more and more bizarre, but the bizarreness didn't stop there until the first time that I stepped into the venue. I brought my dad, and the first thing we did is we collected our buffer coin, and we went to the food trucks, and he had a sweet tooth, so he said, "I think I'm gonna get an ice cream sandwich." Well, his first on-chain transaction, he's very proud to admit, was a funnel cake coffee ice cream sandwich. This is 2 funnel cakes with ice cream, 3 scoops of coffee ice cream smashed in the middle. We then wandered through the venue, went to the makerspace, went to the art exhibits, and we're just amazed by the diversity, by the imagination that we saw in every room. We sat through one talk of a project you might have heard of called Crypto Kitties that was big that year, wrecking gas prices along the way. We got done with it, and I asked him, I said, "So what did you think? What was that experience like?" And he said, "Well, it was kind of like that cantina scene in Star Wars when you walked in and you saw people and creatures from across the galaxy, and you kind of felt like you didn't belong, but somehow you did." And I responded to him, "Well, I'm really glad that no one got their arm chopped off with a lightsaber. I don't think the general liability insurance that I had procured would have covered that." But at any rate, whoever you are, wherever you come from, however many ETHDenvers you've attended, you're welcome here. This is a space where your ideas and your contributions are valued, and it's a place where you come with the skills that you have, whether you're super technical or whether you're not. You still have something to give and something to receive. For me, that was bringing my years in public accounting to an event in crypto prior to knowing any other people in finance or accounting in the space. For my dad, it meant, who was a total crypto normie, took it back to the foundation that he was the president of and was able to accept crypto donations for philanthropic donations for Northern Colorado, which funded many really cool nonprofits. So whoever you are, wherever you're from, you matter here. I'm a little nervous. It would help me if I saw more smiling faces. So if you can do me the favor, turn next to your neighbor and give him a smile. That's great. Dopamine rushes. We're all getting high on dopamine. ETHDenver, pastime of drugs. All right. Let's see. Next, I want you to turn to your neighbor and tell them your ideas and your contributions are important here. Your ideas and your contributions are important here. It's the truest thing, and if you don't take anything else from my talk, I hope you take that. They are important here no matter how many times you've been here, whether it's your first or your 7th. So Web3, why we're all here? We care about it deeply. We care about a future that we know is possible, that we know that Web3 can help bring in. There's things that Web3 can do to combat and fight against corruption. It can better, more equitably distribute profits and economic incentives worldwide. We know that it can protect privacy, it can drive efficiencies, and it creates new opportunities globally in areas that have been underserved. We all know this is possible, and we all, in our own ways, are building to that future. It will take all of us collaborating benevolently to get there, and I believe that incentive design is the mechanism we have to create a future 30, 40, 50 generations down the road that we know is possible. Win better world. So here's a few questions I want to pose to kind of get our minds thinking in this state. The first is, what if Web3 could game design better outcomes for entire communities via thoughtful incentive alignment? Okay. Next, how can we diversify our innovation as an evolutionary necessity? And third, how can we build incentives for those championing human thriving? As I said at the top, I believe human thriving is good business, and if we can build projects and communities to champion our humanity, I think that is going to be a beautiful thing for us as a species, but also our entire ecosystem and planet. So before we get to a future state, we have to start at current state. Where are we at today? What brought us here? Because we know what brought us here probably won't get us there. The current state, I'd like to use the principles of UX design. I'm not a designer. As I said, I'm finance and accounting background. But I think that UX design teaches us something, and it teaches us intentionality. It teaches us where to put a focus of care on experience for our users and for our communities. So using these principles, we go to Web 1, which was primarily tech-centered design, right? It's technology that's static. The UX component isn't nearly as important as it is in other projects because it's technology for technology's sake. We need adoption. We need it to work. We need those layer 1s and layer 2s. And many of us that are building infrastructure projects here at ETHDenver are still in this design mode, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a less of an experience-centric design choice. Then we get to Web 2, where, as many of us know, privacy is not always well considered because we're focusing on user-centered design, human-centered design, where you find a personality, you find a persona, you market the hell out of it, you exploit it, you get profits, rinse and repeat. The peer-to-peer technology doesn't always work because you have a middleman in between, right? It's solely focused on the single user that is the target market, which excludes a lot of people. While it creates great value in a product, and it eliminates all of the pain points that you might experience in a project, it doesn't have a great community, and that's where I believe that we can go with our next phase. In a world of pings, dings, rings, and the tyranny of the red dot, as I like to call it, it is really hard to have long-term vision. We are immediacy biased. We are limited in our ability to think really long-term. And in fact, we're incentivized not to have to because we go from 0 to unicorn status in the shortest amount of time possible to maximize profits and to move on to the next thing. This leads a wake of issues in our path behind us. Our economy is designed to reward those who go the fastest. But it's at the expense, as many of us know, it leads to burnout. It leads to inequitable wealth distribution. There's a lot of downstream impacts that weren't game designed 30 years ago when our economies were booming and down this road of adoption for these internet technologies. So I propose a future state where we design something better. We game design a new game, and we put incentives in place that will thrive our future. There's a new book that I loved recently from Don Norman, a VP of technology at Apple, former, who wrote this book on designing for a better world. And these are the 5 principles that he outlays, and I believe that they're ones that we can adopt, whether you're a product designer, whether you are an executive, whether you're a dev. These same principles apply to each and every one of us, and what they enable us to do is to come up with a framework on design incentives that allow our projects to think more long-term, to think more robust, and to be more communally diverse. So I'd like to go through each one, focusing on the entire ecosystem of people. This also includes all living things, the physical environment. I actually don't like his title of humanity-centered design, and after I titled my talk this and I was able to chew on it for another month or two, I prefer community-centered design because what about our robot friends? What about animals? What about our ecosystems? There's a bigger, broader community, and when we think about it in the sense of humanity, not every stakeholder in the ecosystem gets considered. So with humanity-centered design, community-centered design, I believe that you have to focus on the entire ecosystem. Next is to solve the root issues. There's a few different types of incentives we can deploy, and economic incentives are the ones we're most familiar with, but there's also empathetic incentives. There's social incentives. And if you're not solving for root issues, you might incentivize the wrong behavior and achieve the wrong outcome in the long term. So it's very important to focus on the root issues. Next, take a long-term systems point of view. We must realize that the impact of our actions will take years or generations to appear. We must game design good incentives today with the desired future state in mind. We know that technology changes rapidly. Things change from regulation standpoint, and our needs as communities change. So it's also important to continually test and refine. Are our incentives working? Are the outcomes that we're seeing now the ones that we intended when we first designed our systems? Does our governance structure still work to achieve the outcomes for all of the stakeholders that are participants in our ecosystem? Finally, the last one is to design with the community, not for them. This is the beautiful thing about Web3, and the opportunity that we have is that we are global. We are completely decentralized, and our perspectives are all very nuanced. When you design for a community, in the user-centered design, you exclude a number of participants in your ecosystem. But when you design with the community, you embed yourself in it. You make friends with your shared interests, and then you look around and you say, what are the things that this community needs to thrive? What is it that we're missing? And then it becomes obvious to you what services and products and other sub-communities can form to make this better world. Tied to that is a sense of necessary diversity as an evolutionary necessity. This is really important, and I'd like to frame it around this idea of collective imagination. My wife came up with the term, sitting right here. It's so great to see her. Collective imagination. In 2016, she and I quit our jobs, sold our stuff, and traveled for a year. We had originally decided we were going to go to Australia and New Zealand first because that would be most comfortable and familiar. So we bought tickets via Bangkok, and we were going to spend maybe a week or two in Southeast Asia before continuing on our journey. Suffice it to say, we fell in love with Bangkok, and we stayed in Southeast Asia for a good 3 or 4 months. And why? It's this idea of this collective imagination. Everywhere we went, it was something new. You kind of cocked your head of like, I didn't know it could be done that way. Or I've never seen it kind of thought through. I'll use coffee shops as an example. Everywhere that we went, all these coffee shops, it's got a thriving coffee scene in Southeast Asia. I'm thrilled that DevCon's going to be there in the fall. I think it has a lot to teach us in our industry. Every coffee shop you went to, there'd be something odd, something bizarre, a curved spoon or weird dishware, or chairs are in a circle, or different types of coffee, one that's meant to be drank over 30 minutes while the espresso sticks that were frozen melt into your warm milk, or done in 30 seconds in 3 shots, going from bitter to sweet and hot to cold. Everything was just a little nuanced. And I contrast that to our coffee shops in America. We value as Americans and as Westerners convenience, efficiency, speed. When we do that, our collective imagination then informs our designs and informs our incentives to make design choices that we're not even conscious enough that we're making. Whereas in Asia, they have a different mindset. Their perspectives and their values are different than those of the Western world, and it comes out in their design choices. And you see these beautiful, innovative ideas come through that wouldn't have been possible unless it was this broader collective imagination. In Web3, being as diverse and as global as we are, we have this unique position to make communities globally. We're not tied to these geographic bounds, and our networks are able to have a broader, wider, collective imagination that brings in new ideas, new perspectives, more beautiful thinking, and that will inform our designs and our incentives to be more inclusive. Elephant in the room, I'm a white American male up here talking about diversity. If you are not a white American male, as I said at the top, your ideas are important, your contributions are important. You have something to bring to the space that is uniquely yours, and it's necessary to make this a broader, wider, more inviting space for our entire industry. And if you are a white male, acknowledge that we're in the end game of terrible design choices that have got us to a place where we've ultimately won the game and kept our power And it's not a bad thing to imagine a new future where we distribute that, where we bring others into our strategy decisions and to our governance boards to allow for a broader, wider, more beautiful world. I'd like to go to Opolis as a project. Obviously, I'm most familiar with it, having spent 7 years building it, as an example of a project trying to do some of these future state ideas. The first that I'd like to highlight is the Limited Cooperative Association as a legal wrapper for DAOs. We just released a white paper yesterday. You can find it on our website at opolis.co, analyzing and exploring the different entity types available to DAOs. Which ones allow for the best incentives, the best participation, the best economic and governance distributions, and we really believe that this one's a great one, and that's how we've organized ourselves. It allows us to push work tokens to those that patron the commons. Now, if you are an investor, or if you're a partner, or if you're an internal contributor, or if you're a member, you all are designed to participate and be a good actor, and you get rewarded for your patronage. The more you participate, the more you're rewarded. This balances our economic incentives, it balances our growth incentives, and it balances our vision for sustainability in the future. Another opportunity is, as I said, have equal representation on your boards. If you have multiple classes in your DAOs, or if your projects has investors, but you also are building for a long-term sustainable future, ensure that you have multiple voices on your board that can speak to the different incentives and the different ideas of what you're trying to achieve. Don't exclude some stakeholders in favor of others because of monetary incentives. And finally, build for collective need, right? Control, connection over control equals mutualistic wins. That should be our outcome, is continually connect as a means for mutualistic wins. We can employ community-centered design as a mechanism for design incentives for the future. It's a beautiful world that we know we can create, and the incentives and the long-term systems thinking will get us there. And the main thing to remember is that your ideas and your contributions are important here. You are welcome in the cantina of Web3, and we need you. So come as you are, bring your gifts and your skills and your passions, and come biddle with us. I hope you enjoy ETHDenver. Thank you for your time today, and I'd love to meet any of you.
Oh, hello. Hey, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to be emceeing the next panel.